port of Mombasa towards the Great Lakes region now will have the transition from the standard gauge railway and move on to the meter gauge railway onwards to the western parts of the country, onto Uganda, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And in Diani, we have got the Agnes conference being held in honor of the late cross-country champion who was brutally murdered in a suspected case of gender-based violence at her home in Iten. The conference has been organized by the State Department for Sport, and our reporter Anne Moro is there, and she's going to be giving us links on that, and later she will be speaking with the Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Culture and the Arts, Ambassador Amina Mohammed. So the level playing field in sport is going to be there, and there's going to be capacity building training for athletes and sports officials, and also a report on gender equity drafted by the Committee on Gender Welfare and Equity in Sports, formed by Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohammed, is going to be launched at that conference. So that's on News Outlook that we have got for you today, and we shall be teaming up with our reporters who are out there doing the stories for us, State House, in Naivasha, in Mombasa, and around the country as this program continues. Our sign language interpreter is Lucy Mwaura. So let us now get into our first conversation, and it is about the sport that in 2008 was referred to as a game of gentlemen, played by gentlemen, and I think 6 or 7, and then in 2018, the same person who said that went and asked, you know, for us who are in football, when we see these boards and you're telling people to stay silent, then we will ask you, who are you? We're talking about golf and the magical Kenya Open. It's the region's premier professional event. It's part of the European Tour, and it's got a huge prize fund, 1.75 million euros. We're talking about 227 odd million shillings. And we've got the general manager of the tournament organizers, Kenya Open Golf Limited, Vincent Wangombe, with us this morning. Vincent, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, I know, I was referring to the former Prime Minister, so you know that.
Yes, I was there when you say that, and I remember that statement.
Yeah, and everyone had their chuckle about that. But let's start with the organization of this event. It's a European Tour event. What were the learning lessons from the magical Kenya Open last year and the Kenya Savannah Classic for the organizers?
Okay, so one slight change this year. The European Tour have a sponsor.
Yeah, DP Tour.
So it's DP World Tour. So the entire series this year is being called the DP World Tour. So yeah, we are preparing for it, and everything is going according to plan. Many lessons from last year, and of course with the COVID that is with us, we are doing it in a different way. The Kenya Open and the Kenya Savannah Classic were the first events to be held in Kenya, using the COVID protocols, and we sort of like set up the guidebook for how to run events with COVID. So I think that's one of the major learnings, but on the technical side, we keep learning from the European Tour team, and we will be going ahead to make sure that this event is a great success.
It was a 10-day bubble.
Yes.
For all those who are participating. Yeah. What was that experience for the people who are staying at the hotel and going to Karen back to the hotel in that format?
I'll tell you from my point of view. I, live in Nairobi, and I was staying in a hotel because I had to be in a bubble as a tournament referee as well. So all the officials, all the players, caddies had to be in a bubble, and we had what we were calling a buddy group. So if, for example, you were my buddy, you are the only person I was allowed to sit with without a mask. So, for example, eating or having a drink, but we're not allowed to stay with anybody else. We are social beings, so it's important for us to have that conversation. So we're not allowed to interact with other people. I was only calling my family at home while at the hotel. So for the 10 days, actually 14 days in the hotel was a new experience, running the tournament that way. But it had to be done that way so that we made sure that we protected not just our families, but also the people who are visiting. And the other thing that we also did was we got tested every 2 or 3 days. And if my buddy or I got tested positive, me and my buddy would actually have to leave. So for the players, it was very important also. So if a caddy tested positive, it meant the player
was out of the tournament
and his buddy also out of the tournament. Yeah.
Wow, that it was quite an interesting experience. And from the leaderboard, I don't think and what was the reaction from the European Tour organizers to how you manage that tournament? And I'll make a reference because over the past few days, I mean, everyone's been making noise about the AFCON in Cameroon and Europeans saying this. What was their reaction?
They were very pleased. In fact, you know, with all the challenges that we had in running the tournament with the bubble and all that, they were very pleased with how things turned out. We were able to provide everything that they required. Of course, there were a few people who tested positive during the tournament, and unfortunately they had to be asked to leave. But all in all, the tournament went very well. On the technical side, from you know, for us, hole 1 to 18, that's the most important thing, and we were very pleased that everything went smoothly, the timing went well. The only hitch we had was the live TV, and we are actually making sure that this time round we monitor that they actually bring the equipment on time.
Yeah, and that bizarre case of somebody who decided to go to visit some relatives in Maputo and delayed the equipment.
It wasn't a visit, really. It was actually they were forced by the weather to actually dock at Maputo. So that's why the delay in getting the equipment in. So hopefully this year we'll not have any issues, and we'll have everything running, you know, like clockwork.
Now, well, the other tournament that you do organize as Kenya Open Golf Limited is the Safari Tour, and there are 3 more legs to be played. There's next weekend is at Limuru, then you've got Karen.
This weekend.
Actually, this weekend. Yes. This weekend, Limuru, then Karen, and then Muthaiga.
Yes.
3 more events.
Yes.
How has this been organized differently after what you picked up from the Savannah Classic and the Kenya Open last year?
So the only thing that we did slightly different was on you know, the COVID protocols, making sure that the players are protected and that we don't take anything you know, to chance. But we've run the tournaments just like we've had in the past, trying to build the status of the Safari Tour so that it becomes the African tour. That's our aim, basically, to grow it into an African tour.
Well, and I want to come up to that because it's something that was mentioned last year. Let's just revisit this. You want this event to have World Golf Ranking.
Yes.
What is the procedure to have that, to achieve that?
So we have a list of about 15 conditions that the official World Golf Ranking have given us, and some of them we've already ticked. You know, like the way we run the technical aspect of running the tournament with the referees who are qualified, and you know, the tournament administration side, that is done. The next thing we need to do is raise the prize money. So we need to get an average of 3 million, about 3 million shillings as prize money. And
that's per leg?
Per event, yes.
Per event?
Yes. Yeah, so per leg we need to have that. Actually, it's $30,000 US dollars. We need to have a field of about 80, but we know if we get the money up, we'll get the players. We're already averaging about 65, 70 right now. So we are hopeful that with the prize money and a few other things that we need to do, we will be able to have, you know, we'll be able to join the official World Golf Ranking. We've given ourselves 2 years. So in the next 2 years, we hope to actually get onto the official World Golf Ranking. And one of the other things that we have to have is a live leaderboard. A technical system that will be able to give a live leaderboard and give statistics for players. I mean, if you go to the European Tour site, you'll be able to see how the players have been playing, how, you know, which events they participated in. You'll be able to see, if you want to see how Kenya Open, who won the Kenya Open, or you want to see what Dismas Indiza played in the year 2000,
the records are there.
The records are there. So those are the kind of things that we need to do.
Now, the other one that you mentioned about that is that the prize money was set at 2 million shillings.
Yes.
And there is a distribution. You could just explain that little bit of it. So, because at times people get confused. There is the performance bonus and there is the defined prize money.
Okay. So, technically, I mean, we always have distribution of the prize fund. So, if we have a field of, say, 60 entering a tournament, and we usually take the top 20 who get into the money list.
That's brutal by any standard.
So that's what it is. Yeah. So we will be probably raising that when we get to the $30,000 US. We'll probably raise that to about 30 or 40, depending on the field that we're getting. But the top 20 basically are the ones who get the money. So the distribution is usually 15% for the number one, and then goes reducing 10% for number two, and goes reducing with the last guy getting about 1% or less than 1%. And but what we did is, since we want to see our guys playing better, it's not enough for somebody to come and just play, lead and realize, oh, I'm leading, there's no way I'm getting caught. We want our guys to play under par. And internationally, we are not playing as well as, guys say from South Africa. And under par is usually one of the things that we need to be doing to be able to compete at that level. So we decided to put an incentive. Yeah. So 70% of the money, so, we are looking at 1.4 million for the 2 million pass. 70% goes into that distribution.
That is defined and is standard. That
is standard. So the top 20 guys will have that. Now, we have the other bit, which is the under par bonus, which is 20%. So anybody who plays, all the people who play under par rounds get into that bracket. So for 20% of that money is basically distributed around the guys who play under par rounds. And then we have another 10% for those who have played 3 under or better. Yes. So we have all that defined. Now, for the money that will be left over from that last bit, because for those who don't play under par, there's what has been allocated to them. If they don't get it, all that money is pushed forward to the final event, which will be at Muthaiga. Yes. Wow,
very interesting. And just to mention is that one person who's taken who actually has enjoyed a full pay day, I think it's Justice Madoya after the Uganda Open.
Justice Madoya did that, and we've also had Robson Chinoi and a few other players. They've actually been able to get the under par bonus. Mohit Medirata, I think, and Edwin Mudanyi. Those, we are getting better scores. We are seeing a lot more better scores as we go along.
Well, you mentioned the performance levels and how it comes. Last year, only 2 Kenyans made cut. David Waku at the Savannah Classic and Samuel Njoroge at the Magical Kenya Open.
Yes.
Cut was at -2.
Yeah.
How has this grown? Because you also have a requirement that if you play 14 over on day one, that's the end of the event for you.
Yeah. So what we've put that as our condition. That if you play 86 or worse, on day one, you don't play even day 2. So you don't even get to participate. And one of the things that we have realized is the quality of play with some of these conditions that we have put is getting better. And we've got a lot of criticism from, different quarters for what we are doing. And as you rightly said, brutal. That's a word you used. A lot of people are thinking we are being very brutal when it comes to performance. But think about it this way. If we're going to raise our standards, we have to make sure that we are able to separate the wheat from the chaff. We have to get our best players, and guys have to be psyched up to play under par. And that's the only way that we are going to do this. And one of the things that we have our sights on, and that's our long-term plan, is get a Kenyan playing in the Olympics in 2028. And since it's pros who play these tournaments, the Olympics, we have to make sure that we build the quality, and the official World Golf Ranking is one of the things that we need to do for our players to be able to get good ranking to play in that tournament.
You're talking about a Kenyan getting into the top 60 in the world, because that's the selection criteria for the Olympics.
Actually, it's not top 60. I mean, if you look at some of the players, they're actually top 300. It's actually
because of the country allocations.
Exactly.
That's why it comes down.
And that's why we're saying one player. We are not being too ambitious to get somebody in the top 60. We're just saying we'll get somebody in the top 300. Right now, our best players are, 1,000, I think, 200 and something. Yeah, so nowhere near. But we need to be able to get our players at that level. And for that reason, we are very focused on making sure that the performance level is getting better. And we're seeing that. The more the money, we are seeing more players coming from the rest of Africa. Zimbabwe, I mean, I mentioned Robson Chinoy from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
We have Andrew Odo from Nigeria. These are players who are coming and, taking breakfast from our boys here. So it's important that we raise our standards, not by protecting our guys, but by making sure that they can actually play to the same level as the best guys in Africa.
Of which now it comes to the Kenya Open at this end of the Safari Tour. At the moment, top on the leaderboard, let me just go through this. After the Uganda Open, at the top is Dismas Ndiza, Mzee wa Kazi. He's at the moment, he's got the ranking points at the top. Then Robson Chinoy, then Simon Gige, Eric Oko, Greg Snow, David Waku, Samuel Njoroge. We've got Edwin Mudanyi and now Mohit Medirata. I want to, first of all, look at the criteria of how you weight it.
Okay.
The points from 2021, 2022, 70%. That's how they count.
Yeah.
The previous season takes 20%, and then you've got 10% from 2019, 2020. How does then this weighted average work for a golfer?
So one of the things that we, after a lot of discussion, we realized, yes, we are attracting players from not just Africa. We're even getting inquiries now from Spain, Portugal, and the UK. Actually, I think Karen and Muthaiga will have some players from the UK. We are looking at also getting people who've been participating for long, carrying forward points from the previous season, so that they have a bit of a cushion from, top talent that comes from the rest of the world. So the more, as I said, the more we get our prize pass going up, the more we are going to get players coming in from the rest of the world. And for us to be on the official World Golf Ranking, we cannot discriminate. So this is the only legal way of discriminating and saying, you've been participating in our tournaments, yes, you'll be able to carry points forward. So the Kenyans, we allowed 8 slots as per the DP World Tour regulation. So we allowed 8 slots for the nationals.
Kenyan nationals.
Yes.
And that's just the professionals only.
Yes, that's the professionals.
The total field?
So total field 156. 6 amateurs out of that. We allowed 8 nationals and 8 invites. And out of those 8 invites, we have to have sponsors invites. We have to have 2 who are part of the DP World Tour. So for the Safari Tour members who are not Kenyan, we are actually assuring them that 2 will get a slot. And we may go to 3 if we don't get too many demands from our sponsors in terms of the sponsor slots.
So already I can see who? Robson Chinoy, Paul Chidale of Malawi.
Yes.
And probably Andrew Odo.
Yes. So those are the top 3. And there's, I think, Abe Bagalana from Uganda, who's also not too far off.
Yes.
Yeah. Or Dewa Kope.
Okay. Yeah, actually, if I just basically looking at this, who's the highest ranked Ugandan? Ronald Rugumayo.
Oh, okay. So surprise. I actually thought it was Abe Bagalana. Yeah, but anyway, that's basically how we will be selecting the players. So 8 Kenyans, 2 or 3 non-Kenyans from the Safari Tour, and then we have the sponsors invite. So for example, if you remember in 2019, we had a Korean,
yes,
Hosung Choi. That was, from Magical Kenya. KTB told us, we're interested in this market. Are you able to get in somebody? Because the moment we get somebody from that market, the eyes from the tourists or the potential tourists are on that player. And that's basically what happens. So if you look at the distribution of worldwide coverage and where people are watching, it basically follows the players that we have on the field.
Wow, that's very interesting. And as you mentioned about 6 amateurs, so far we only know of 3.
Yes.
There's John Legirma.
John Legirma was the Kenya amateur match play champion.
Yes.
And Adel Balala, who won the Kenya Amateur Stroke Play. Now, Adel Balala also went on to win the Kenya Amateur Golf Championship, the whole series. So we gave the next, KG gave the next slot, the person who was second, and that is Michael Karanga. Michael Karanga is the 3rd amateur. So the other 3 will be announced at the Sigona Bowl this weekend. Wow. After the Sigona Bowl this weekend. So we'll have 2 juniors and 1 wild card. Yeah.
Well, I was actually coming to that. And as before we move on, to how the Muthaiga tournament is going to be organized and that, the case of Wahu and Njoroge, they do not have the pleasure of direct qualification.
No.
As was previously, where those who made cut would get direct entry.
No. So for us, it's very important that your current form dictates if you're able to get the slot or not. So in the past, what PGK would do is they had their own qualification, and they really didn't have many tournaments. We're trying to increase the number of tournaments and the way, have a different way of ranking, which is above board. So you see, if a player, I'm not saying Waku or Njoroge are not playing well, but imagine if they knew that they were qualified to play in this year's Kenya Open. They probably not work as hard. And you may find that by the time they're getting there, their form is not as good. So we don't want that to happen with the Safari Tour. So that's the current form is actually most important when it comes to who we put, to play in the tournaments.
When the Kenya Open was part of the Challenge Tour,
yes,
there were collaborations with other, say, the Sunshine Tour and that. What are the opportunities, collaborative opportunities now that would be available for Kenyan pros?
Actually, with the Challenge Tour, what would happen was a bit of horse trading. So the tournaments that we'd have a lot more slots. So we had about, I think, was it 15 invites or something like that, 26 locals or 20-something locals, and we had a lot more leeway to invite other players. So Sunshine Tour would come to us and tell us, hey, please give us slots for these 4 or 5 guys, and we'll give you 4 slots for your guys on the Sunshine Tour. And that's the beauty of the Challenge Tour. There's not that much competition for slots. And, you'd also get guys like, say, the PGA of China or India writing to Kenya and saying, hey, if you give us 2 slots, we'll give you 2 slots for tournament. And that's basically the kind of horse trading that would happen with the Challenge Tour because of the number of slots that we were able to have. So one of the things that we are keen to do as we move forward, we would like to get a bit more collaboration with the Challenge Tour. And it's our hope that we will have another 1 or 2 other Challenge Tour events. You see, Kenya Open is already in the European Tour. We hope to have 1 or 2 other events in the Challenge Tour. So basically, Magical Kenya Open and Savannah Classic in the European Tour, and have other tournaments which are part of the Challenge Tour.
But tell us about the Savannah Classic. What's on with the tournament?
So unfortunately this year we're not able to have it. So we're not going to have the Kenya Savannah Classic. But it is our hope that in future we'll be able to have this Kenya Savannah Classic as part of the European Tour. And it's all dependent on sponsorship. We're looking to, raise money, as you rightly said, 1.75 euro prize pass is just what we are required to raise for just the prize pass. But there's also a lot of other, costs that are tagged to the event, food, preparation, all that has to be done.
And now, let's come to the selection of courses where you can play a tournament of this level. Which are the ones that are available in Kenya? Because you already know of Karen. That's why you've had the European Tour event so far, and Muthaiga is hosting this year. So
the European Tour have their staging team, which has gone round different courses, had a look, and identified which courses can potentially host the Kenya Open. And the 5 that were identified at the time were Muthaiga, Karen, Limuru, Sigona, and Windsor. But there were certain conditions. The other courses were given. Muthaiga and Karen are ready, but you see, for the European Tour, Muthaiga and Karen don't have sufficient range. The practice range. So for the Karen, when we hosted it at Karen, we had a place where we were able to have a range outside the club. And with Muthaiga this year, we're actually going to have the range at the Kenya Forestry Services grounds, which is
just right across that drift.
Exactly, a short distance. In fact, as the crow flies from the gate of Muthaiga to where the range is, it's only 800 yards. Yeah, so that's a short distance for that. For us to have the range. So the other courses also have their conditions. Limuru has a few things that they need to do: equipment, range. Sigona, they need a range. Windsor, there are certain things to do, the quality of the course. So those ones, once they have that ready, they'll be able to. We will be able to have the events in those areas. The other place which we have never taken the European Tour staging team is Vipingo, and that's the other place which is a potential host for the Kenya Open in future. Actually,
the Ladies European Tour was played at Vipingo,
and it is going to be played again this year in another 2 weeks. Mid-February. Yeah, so from I think the 8th to the 13th. I can't remember the dates exactly. Yeah, to Vipingo of February.
So that's one to look out for, and definitely we'll give you that story. Now this year's event is going to be held at Muthaiga.
Yes.
What was the choice of moving it to Muthaiga?
So we are always trying to expose the different clubs, and as I said, Muthaiga and Karen are the 2 clubs that are really ready to host the event. So after having 3 events, European Tour events at Karen, it was time to move to the next venue. And so that's why we made the decision. It's not that there was something wrong with Karen. It's the fact that we also need to keep moving this event to give other clubs the opportunity to host the event.
Something interesting about Muthaiga people may not know is that the back 9 and the front 9 are separated by Kiambu Road.
Yes.
How's that organizing, considering that this is an event that's made for TV?
Yes. So the one most important thing to do is ensure that, you see, unlike football or rugby, when you have TV coverage for football, you only have one stadium.
Yes.
With golf, you have 18 stadia, and they all have to be somehow linked as the players move from
every hole. Number 1 to number 18 is a stadium by its own.
Exactly. So we have the first 9, hole number 1 to 9, on one side of the road and 10 to 18 on the other side. So it's a challenge for TV. But one of the things that we have to do is ensure that we have a separate bridge for the TV crew and the players, other than the one that they have currently, that they use currently. So we'll have a separate bridge. We've already identified the area where we're going to have the European Tour production TV compound. It's a huge operation. I mean, these guys come with container loads of equipment to be able to cover all the 18 stadia, as we just said. And all these preparations are in place right now. One container alone is actually just cable, which they lay cable all over the course. So they have TV towers at every green, and so it's a challenge to have it on two different sides of the road, but we are up to the task.
The other one everyone talks about is, how would I do this? How would I describe this? The agronomy. That's what I was looking for.
Yes.
How do you ensure that the fairways, the greens, even the tee boxes are up to European standards?
That's one very important thing for the European Tour. So they don't take chances on this. And the beauty about hosting this event in Kenya, the European Tour events, is we not only get the exposure. These guys send the top agronomists to come and look at the course. And we have the knowledge being percolated down to our local greenkeepers. And what happens is they come with a list. I mean, they look at the course. So the European Tour agronomist visited Kenya around October, came up with a list of things that Muthaiga was supposed to do to get ready. Muthaiga have a super team. I mean, they have a very good team, course team that is actually working on that, and they're in constant touch with the European Tour team. And we are all, right now, the only thing that was lagging behind was the range. And, I'm happy that we have some rains now. They've just planted the grass, laid the grass for the range, which will be, as I mentioned, at the KFS. And it is our hope that it will be ready and settled for the event. But on the course preparation, Muthaiga is up to the task.
Something else I noticed, I think it was 5 or 6 years back, around 20, is that the way greens are on day one, they are not touched again. Explain that concept and what it means.
So here's what happens when we start the tournament, actually the week of the tournament. So Muthaiga hands over the course on the Sunday of the week of the tournament. They hand over the course. So where the greenkeeper is the one who calls the shots and says, water this green, do this, do the other. It's actually taken up by the European Tour agronomist. He's the one now who develops his schedule for what the course team is going to do. They cut the greens. They do a lot of work, but what tends to happen is they actually don't water the greens as much as we water them on a regular basis. That's what probably you notice. They will not let them dry out, but they actually want the greens to be firm. That is firm and fast. And the grass basically is stressed during that time of the tournament because of the way they actually make sure that it's fast, firm, and that's, I guess, what you're referring to.
Yes.
And they just make sure that the greens are in the condition that you'll find in other parts of the world. And this is what these guys are used to. This is what the players, the international players, are used to. And that's why you see all these backspins. With a short club, they'll hit the ball onto the green with a lot of backspin. And, those are some of the things that are exciting to watch for our spectators.
Then there is also the factor, what people would call the hole, but you call it the pin position. Yes. I mean, if I was to use my table as a green, I know on day one it will be here. Yes. Day two, it will be at this point. Day three, it could be in the middle, and day four at another end.
Yes.
How do you change that? How do you market? And the question, at what time do you do it?
So I have had the privilege and honor of training under the European Tour team from 2015 to set up a course for players, and that's exactly the same thing we do on Safari Tour. So basically, if I'm setting up one of the 9s, I come up with a plan. I'll go and look at it and say, okay, this is hole number 18 Muthaiga. I expect the players to be hitting, say, a 5-iron onto the course on day 1. So how do I make it challenging? I think this side will be good. Day 2, this side. And the last day, I want it to be near the spectators. Where are they going to be? So if this is where the grandstand is, I want to have a green where your pen is. And so I come up with a plan based on all the holes, where the spectators are going to be, difficulty. And I'll have, if I'm setting 1 9, I'll have 3 difficult ones, 3 average, and 3 easy. Yeah, so I'll just make sure that I move this around and I have a plan for the entire tournament, so that once I have my plan just before the tournament, then for the pro-am, for example, or for the practice day, then I can put them in the easy position, say in the middle. But if you look at these guys when they're practicing, they usually have an idea where these pin positions are going to be, and they'll go doing this, testing the different places. But what we do is the day before. So, for example, we start on Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday the 3rd. On Wednesday, I'll put the pin position for Thursday. Yeah. So I go and mark it at the end of the day on Wednesday. And I have my list and I have the pin positions on a piece of paper, and these guys then, the greenkeepers, go around and look for those pin positions, cut the hole in that position. And the next day in the morning, I do the same for Friday. I just go and verify that they've cut the hole in the right position and mark for the next day. So that's basically some of the things that we do when you're setting up the course. It's not just the holes, it's also the tees. Can move back and forth a bit, make sure that the teeing area is good enough, looking at what distance are they hitting. If it's a par 3, I'll have to tell the TV guys what the distance is. What distances are they having on the different holes, especially the drivable holes. So it's a lot of work that goes, the technical work that goes into setting up the course.
In golf, something I realized is that there is something that looks, a bit like a telescope or binoculars, which they use to, measure the yardage. Is that allowed now?
So the distance measuring devices are allowed now for amateur events. And for the professional events, like the European Tour events, these guys get a book. They get a book with the yardages. So they're actually not allowed to have the range finders. So those range finders basically give you the exact distance from where you are to, say, the hole, the flag. It actually, gets a distance to the flag. So for the European Tour events, they're not allowed. But for the Safari Tour, because we don't have these books, and we realize we are actually not helping our players by not having the rangefinder and the book, and not having the book as well. So we allow them to use the rangefinders so that they can actually tell the exact distance from where they are, so they know what club to play.
Now, the arrangements for these years, Magical Kenya Open, what does the playbook read?
So one of the things that we are very fortunate is, with the way things are going right now, with the vaccination levels that we have in the country, we are fortunate that we are currently allowed to have spectators. So we expect to have spectators. We expect to have the full field from the European Tour. So the full tournament like we had in 2019, with spectators, players, all that. That's what we are hoping to get for the 2022 event. Now, one of the things, of course, we have realized is the spectators also want a good time on the course. So we also have arrangements for that, but those we'll be announcing a bit later. But in terms of preparation, we are looking at 156, the full complement of players. The officials were in constant touch with the European Tour. COVID team, we are in touch with them. Now, we will not have, we're not calling it a bubble this time, but we will have restrictions. So players and officials will still be staying in a hotel. And there will be areas for players and officials that nobody else outside that group will be allowed. We will still have tests for our, players and officials. We will liaise with the Ministry of Health to find out what we need to allow our spectators in. Will it be a vaccination certificate like they said, or will it be what will it be at that particular point? But at this point we haven't received those details, and we hope that we shall have this clarity in another week or two, and we shall start communicating the same to all the public, basically.
What are some of the confirmations of entries that you may have had so far, people who may be interested in coming to play?
So far, we don't know. What usually happens, it's a bit early right now, what usually happens is they have their top-ranked players. Those get the first right of refusal. But here's the thing, with the prize pass going up and the fact that there's no clash, remember in the past, our tournament has always been at the same time with the Players' Championship in the US.
Yes.
So this time it's at a different time slot. With the prize pass up, a different time slot, timing for our tournament, it's very likely that we'll have a very strong field. Just like we did last year with the 2 events back to back, we got a good field. I mean, some of the players that we had, would typically not come for our events. But we are actually very optimistic that we'll have a very strong field. But we get to know this about 3 or so weeks to the event. That's when they start putting in their names. Yeah.
The conversations around it, what are they? What is it that you do to get reach out to the Kenyan public outside of the golfing circles?
The publicity, basically, apart from the Kenyan public, we are also very much in touch with our neighbors, the East African unions, and those are our first point of call. The rest of the African countries, basically, if you look at what happens with international events, European Tour events, the attraction is usually more on TV, and some people will follow some players and go around with them. But for the region, basically, we are talking to Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and we're expecting to get spectators from those areas as well. And, as we said, it'll be live on TV. We expect to have, all 4 days covered, and, get that information or the live coverage outside to everybody live from day one.
The legacy project that can be put around the Safari Tour, which one would it be when it comes overall to the growth? Because we saw that, I think it was at Sigona, the event was won by an amateur. We've seen Mutahi Kebugo and Mohit Medirata, young golfers, turning pro. What is it that can be felt in the long term?
So here's the thing, if you don't give players continuity, they sort of drop off and start looking at other things. And the one thing that we said, and the strategy the Kenya Open Golf Limited took to encourage growth in the game, yes, we have very good players like Indiza, but at 50, and Jacob Okello at 50, they probably at the tail end of their careers. we need to be looking at the youngsters. And that's why we actually put a condition that we allow amateurs, not just boys, but girls as well. So by the Safari Tour, that's the other difference with other tours. It's unisex. I mean, we have ladies as well who play. So we say we want, apart from the pros, we want young players. And the amateurs are either 24 years or under, and they enter through the KGU, or the other thing is the club is allowed, the hosting club is allowed one exemption, and the captain of the hosting club is allowed to give us one name of a person who doesn't fall in that age category, who will then participate in that tournament. So with that, we've seen a lot of youngsters coming and playing. In fact, I remember one time at Muthaiga 2 years ago, Njoroge Kibugu, one of the top amateurs, came to me. He was in tears when he was told that he couldn't get to play because his handicap was higher than what we had stipulated. And he asked me, if I go and play well today and get chopped, can I play in the tournament? And I told him, yes. If you get your handicap chopped, we'll be able to play.
All right. Yeah. You've had it. Vincent Wangombe, the general manager of the Kenya Open Golf Limited, speaking to us about the magical Kenya Open and the Safari Tour. The Safari Tour resumes at Limuru this weekend till Wednesday, and the magical Kenya Open the 3rd to the 6th of March at the Muthaiga Golf Club. Well, thank you very much, Vincent. We'll be getting to another conversation, but right now let's go over to Diani, where we've got the Agnes Tirop conference being held in honor of the late cross-country champion. Agnes Tirop was brutally murdered in a suspected case of gender-based violence at her home in Iten, and the Cabinet Secretary for Sport, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, put together a task force, and they've organized this conference. Speaking right now is the Principal Secretary, State Department for Sport, Joe Okudo.
From today, and that we do not let any of our children fall prey, as Agnes Tirop did. From the ministry, I pledge as the Principal Secretary to implement the recommendations of this conference to the letter. And in that respect, I hope we have constructive dialogue, coming up with solutions that are workable and practical, and give us an opportunity to start this journey. It's a long journey. It's not going to end in the next 3 days, but it's a journey that we're going to take together. And just make sure you're counted as one of those men and women who stood up to put this vice and bury it once and for all. With those few remarks, my job here really was not to make any speech, but to introduce my colleagues. So I will first start by asking Principal Secretary for Culture to come in and say hello, and a few words to the congregation. Please give a hand of applause.
Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage, the representatives of the judiciary, my colleague, PS Joe Okudo, the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry. I can't mention you, all of you by name, but all protocols observed. Good morning. My names are Josephta Omukobe. I am the Principal Secretary in the State Department of Culture and Heritage. And it's my pleasure to attend this forum, this function, that actually talks about the gender-based violence. And as a person, as all of you can see, that I am living with a disability. I don't know whether I'm living with it, but I have a disability. And when it comes to gender issues, just as my sister, the singer, the great singer said, persons with disabilities face it most. And women with disabilities, they face it even worse. And to me, my motto has always been to consider myself the most important person alive. It's not because I am being selfish, but just to appreciate me. Once I set that standard of appreciating myself, I think everything else will fall into place. Issues of exploitations are there. Issues of undermining one another are there. Issues of discrimination are based on gender and also based on disability are always there. But once I've set my place, I'll always argue myself out of any situation. And as we celebrate this great day, and remember, where we remember our sister, Agnes Tirop, the issue of gender-based violence is not just among the sportsmen or the artists, it's also within our society. Every time we wake up, man kills woman, woman kills man, man kills family, and really, we do not know what to do about this. I don't know whether it's still gender-based, or I don't know, family-based, I don't know what it is. Maybe the great judge will tell us what is ailing our society. And I think as we celebrate this day, in remembrance of our sister, we should be having more and more of such sessions, not just in Mombasa, but everywhere within our villages, so that members of the public are sensitized about this gender-based violence. And as sportsmen, as we join the sports field and we gain fame, we should always remember that we are the most important people in our lives. And we shall always have those predators coming to share what we have built or what we have got. But once we respect ourselves, once we think that we are important, I think these cases of people exploiting us unnecessarily will reduce. Thank you for listening to me.
So there again we heard about this is a plague within our society, and the fact that we need to appreciate ourselves first and ensure that we create standards so as not to be exploited as one of the solutions. I want us to keep remembering as the day goes by is that if you're not on the table, you become part of the menu. I think it's very important. And thank you for that. If you're not on the table, negotiating table, you become part of the menu, and the predators are all over. So just make sure you're on the table. Allow me to introduce the Chief Administrative Secretary, Jackie Nuthia, to come and address you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PS. Ambassador Dr. Amina Mohamed, the Cabinet Secretary, Your Leadership, Justice Njoki Ndungu, the retired judge, Justice Oluoch, my brother the DPP, Nuruddin Mohamed Haji, my PS, Josfeta Mukobe, ambassadors present here, Ethiopia, Zambia, and French represented here, the chairman of AK, General Tuwei, all protocols observed because that is the nature of English. May you allow me, before I say a word, to recognize and, in the interest of my 2 minutes, share one with a lady who has been in this business for a long time. Business of gender mainstreaming, business of female gender empowerment. My colleague in the government, Chief Administrative Secretary, Lina Jebi Kilimo.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Honorable Zach, for giving me this opportunity. Maybe I'll be present later on, but I stand here on behalf of my Cabinet Secretary, Professor Margaret Kobia, who was not able to join us. But in the course of the week, she promised that she will join us. I'm really humbled to attend this function today, and I want to congratulate Ambassador Amina for bringing life and visibility to the sports arena and addressing these really core issues on GBV. I happen to come from Iten, where most athletes go to train. And some of my family members too have been to that Iten, but they never made it to the platform in the bigger arena because of these GBV things. Either you will undergo female genital mutilation and you're supposed to get married immediately, or the brokers have been an impediment to our naive, and indeed most of the people there are naive. So I look forward to this conference, the deliberations, the outcomes, and then all of us, we take our own lens and run with the deliberations of this conference. So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. I am also here with the Director of Gender-Based Violence from the ministry. So we are here to also gather more information. It may also improve our policy on how we implement GBV. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. She was serving in Kibaki's government as a Minister for Gender, and she has been doing this work. You know these things. I may not be able to go back. Could there be another of my colleague here, escaping my memory, Chief Administrative Secretary in government? Could there be another one? Okay. I don't want war after here. I have to.
So those are the live pictures, and they're coming from the Agnes the Agnes Tirop conference that's being held in Diani. It's a 3-day conference that will run under the theme Leveling the Playing Field, Gender Inclusivity in Sports, and will include plenary sessions and panel discussions on areas such as legal, policy and institutional framework, women in leadership and sports, mental health, resource mobilization, among others. And there will be capacity building trainings for athletes and sports officials. And also the Cabinet Secretary for Sport, Ambassador Amina Mohamed, will launch the report on gender equity. This was drafted by the Committee on Gender Welfare and Equity in Sport that she formed last year and is chaired by Catherine Dereva, who is a world champion, a 2-time Olympic silver medalist in the marathon. So she is the one who's handling that. And that follows reported cases of sexual harassment and biased team selection in some of the national teams. Anne is our reporter, and she will also be speaking with the Cabinet Secretary for Sport, Ambassador Amina Mohamed, in our later bulletins. Let us now take a short break, and when we come back, we get into more sporting conversations.
is singing that song. So anaimba alafu include some rap in there, just praising the Lord. And I can't wait for this song to be out because it's gonna be a fire song. Gospel artist too, eh? Now, Kanye West might be facing a 6-month imprisonment. This is after he had an altercation with a fan and he punched the fan on the face.
You know, people always say that they get too big to go to a battle or they get too big to cypher on TV.
On this album, Fioke stretches the storyline from his array of commercially successful singles such as Sweetest Thing featuring Rick Hassani to Like featuring Ricardo Banks and Tiwa Savage.
Perfection. You dream of a minute.
Tusirudi nyuma kwa mipaka na nchi kufungwa. Tusirudi kwa biashara na shule kufungwa. Kwa kutoweza kukutana. Kwa kutengana na tuwapendao, tusirudi nyuma.
Na kuhitaji unikinge, pata chanjo.
Ili tuendelee na maisha vizuri.
Na kuhitaji unikinge, pata chanjo.
Na kuhitaji unikinge,
pata chanjo.
Na kuhitaji unikinge,
pata chanjo.
Na kuhitaji unikinge, pata chanjo.
Ili tuendeleze maisha bora kwa ajili ya wapendao, nchi yetu na usoni wetu. Kwa ajili yetu sisi sote. Pata chanjo. Kaa chonjo. Kuhakikisha nchi yetu na uchumi wetu umestawi katika uwazi. Tusirudi nyuma.
The process proudly brought to you by Buchan Furnitures Limited, local manufacturers of quality office furniture and dealers in quality office equipment like fireproof safes and cabinets. For orders, visit our showroom at Uniafric House, Koinange Land off Koinange Street.
Welcome back to Sports Check this Monday morning. My name is Daniel Wahome. How are you doing? Well, we've had one conversation around golf, and now we shall be getting into a conversation around football, the Africa Cup of Nations. It's turning out that there has the match day 2, as we would refer to it, the second set of matches, have been a goal fest. Match day 1 was not a goal fest. What is in store for match day 3? We shall be getting into that conversation shortly. But at the moment, something we got to remind you about, an event that we shall be covering live. The president of Hungary, János Adair, is in the country for a 4-day state visit. He arrived accompanied by Hungarian First Lady Anita Herceg, and they were received at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi, and that was by the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Rachel Omamo. And President Adair will be holding talks with President Uhuru Kenyatta during his visit. Kenya, remember, enjoys warm relations with Hungary. Hungary set up their embassy in Kenya way back in 1964. So that event is going to be at State House Nairobi, where it's going to be officially received by President Uhuru Kenyatta. Our team is there, and we shall be joining them as soon as that link is through to us. So hold on for that event. Then let's get straight to a conversation around football, and let's actually move over to State House Nairobi, where President Janos Adair is being welcomed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and also First Lady Margaret Kenyatta. He is accompanied by First Lady Anita Hertzeg, and they're making their way, and the president is introducing his Hungarian counterpart to the heads of the military in Kenya and the National Police Service. And we can also see that the Chief of the Defense Forces, General Kibochi, is also accompanying the president as they move to the portico of State House Nairobi. And after that, the national anthems of the Republic of Kenya and the national anthem of Hungary are going to be played, after which President Adair is going to inspect a guard of honor mounted by the Kenya Defense Forces. Let us move over to State House as the anthems are played. You have pictures coming in from State House Nairobi, where Hungarian President Janos Adair has been received by President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House Nairobi. And the anthems of the two countries have been played. And what was going on just before we lost the sound, our pictures from State House Nairobi, was the 21-gun salute. And that's been mounted by the Kenya Defense Forces. And after that, President Janos is expected to inspect a guard of honor that has been mounted by the Kenya Air Force. Is to identify them by their blue ceremonial uniform, the band also coming in from the Kenya Air Force. And so He's here, the president of Hungary, János Adair. He's in the country for a 4-day state visit. So with President Uhuru Kenyatta today, bilateral talks happening out there at State House, Nairobi. So we can now go back to State House, Nairobi, where President János Adair is inspecting the guard of honor. Well, we've got a technical problem with the link coming in from State House, Nairobi. And just a brief again of that is that the event is that President Uhuru Kenyatta is holding bilateral talks with President János Adair of Hungary, who arrived in the country yesterday and was received at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport by Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Rachel Omamo. And he is going to be there, and he is accompanied by Hungarian First Lady Anita Herceg, and they've been received by President Uhuru Kenyatta and First Lady Margaret Kenyatta. Over to State House, Nairobi.
Your Excellency, may I have your permission to march off the guard of honor staff? March off the division. Move to the left side. Right turn.
members of the cabinet who he will be speaking with, and also President Uhuru Kenyatta meeting the delegation from Hungary and those who work at the Hungarian embassy. They're going to be holding bilateral talks with President Uhuru Kenyatta. And remember that some time back for Hungary, they got into a partnership with Kenya, focusing especially on orthopedic medicine. So a lot the conversations, we shall get more details of it from our team that is at State House Nairobi, who are going to be giving us a briefing once they are done with that bilateral with the bilateral talks, President Uhuru Kenyatta and President János Áder of Hungary. Well, there is a change in the sign language box, and coming in right now is Anastasia Wangeshi over this next 40 or so minutes of the program. So let's get now into a sporting conversation. And, you know, the tournament that everyone's been talking about, the Africa Cup of Nations, going on in Cameroon. Match day 1 was dry of goals. Only one match had 3 goals. The opening game between involving Cameroon, they won by 2-1. There were barren draws. Any other win was a 1-0 win. And to get into that conversation, football data analyst John Agriotieno, welcome. And the first thing I would like to ask, what was that shift from something that was dry of goals to match day 2 being a goal fest?
Well, I think you can attribute this to the fact that a lot of these teams did not have pre-tournament games to help them prepare and gel together. Now, I think the first game, and I think you remember the Algerian coach saying that the first game for them was like, you know, a pre-tournament friendly of sorts. So now in the second game, most of the teams already know what they want to play, how they want to play, and so suddenly, you know, the floodgates of goals just open. Yeah.
Well, and talking about the floodgates, well, we are getting into match day 3 from tonight, and that's a critical one to determine who goes to the round of 16. But let us first look at how the matches were played. Senegal were in action, and John, if you were to talk about this as they played their match last night, what with some of the teams that carry the tag of favorites?
Well, I think, you know, like we have always said, I think in this program in the past, that the gap between the big, you know, the traditional big boys and the new boys is narrowing.